Good evening. I think we'll call this meeting of the Champaign County Board Facilities Committee to order at, what is it, 6 o'clock or 6:31? 6:31. I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Anderson, Hartke, Quisenberry, Rector, Rosales, Schwartz, Maxwell.
Here.
Second.
I would like to, at this point, note some corrections to the Now we're good. We're good now. All right. I'd like to correct the agenda, or pardon me. I'm sorry. The agenda is fine. I'm sorry. We have a motion, a second, for the approval of the agenda. May all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The next item would be the approval of the December 1st, 2015 meeting minutes. And I would like to propose an amendment to those, or a change to those minutes.
I'll move the minutes so that you can get a second.
Okay. Do we need to do that as amended, or do we need to do?
Second.
Okay.
We can have discussion and you can.
Okay. All right. It has been moved and seconded. At this point in time, would like to have the discussion now. All right. I would like to offer the change to line 110, starting at 110 in the minutes. And where it says, Mr. Maxwell replied, that would be in line 111. Replied the 4.5 million is the backlog over 10 years. I would like to change that to say the 4.5 million is the annual amount needed to maintain our current deferred maintenance backlog at 3% of the overall current replacement value of the county's buildings over the next 10 years under funding scenario 2. The deferred maintenance backlog using scenario 2 is $9.5 million.
Mr. Maxwell, is that in fact what you said?
No.
Then I don't think we can change the minutes to reflect something you did not say.
Okay. All right then.
So, is the main point is that you want to say it's 4.5 annual as opposed to 4.5 over 10 years? Because that would be significant. So if you said that, I think it would make a big difference.
Annual. What I meant to say was annually over the next
Okay,
each.
so how about if we add the annual and then, so to correct for the intent and then skip the rest?
All right. Is that change acceptable? So we'll just say 4.5 million annual over the next 10 years. Thank you. Right now we have time is for public participation.
Point of order, we need a vote.
I'm sorry. Those in favor of the correction to the agenda?
Aye.
Or correction to the minutes, I'm sorry. Correction to the minutes. Motion carried. Item 5, public participation. Is anybody here that would like to enter into the public participation portion of this meeting? Patsy, John? All right, thank you. Seeing no public participation, We'll move on then and close that portion of our agenda and move on to communications, item 6. Are there any communications from the committee? Yes.
I just wanted to mention, since this is facilities, I feel this is a little bit of a tangent, but this Friday, the See You at Home organization is sponsoring their One Winter's Night fundraiser, where folks from around the community spend the night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. out in downtown Champaign to raise money for that group, which serves the homeless, actually the most critically needy homeless in our community, and I think it's a good program, and I hope people pay attention to it.
Thank you, James. Any other communications? If not, I would like to move on to the item 7, which is Bailey Edwards architectural presentation of the Department of Justice ADA findings with cost estimate to update county facilities at this point.
Thank you. I'm Robin Whitehurst with Bailey Edward, and tonight Carla Smalley is with me, and Chris Billings from Burns Clancy, our civil engineers here. As there's, you'll see that we're going to go through items that have civil issues to them. So we've handed out a couple of packets to you. There's one with a picture of the courthouse in the cover. This is really the presentation that we're going to show tonight. The other long 11 by 17 is a detailed spreadsheet as an example of what we've been working with for each building and the DOJ comments. And we'll get into this a little bit later. I just wanted to orient you to what the two booklets are. Just real quickly, this is the topics that we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about the standards, kind of the background and approach on this accessibility issues with the county. Talk about access issues that still remain. There's some access issues that have been taken care of. Carla's going to go over that, and then just kind of next steps in project planning. At this point, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Carla. She's been doing a lot of the work on the accessibility study and on the numbers and everything you're going to see here.
So the next page in your handout really is an overview of terms that you'll hear tonight. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. I'm not going to read you all the definitions. I'll spare you that. Department of Justice, DOJ. Opinions of Probable Construction Cost, or OPCC. Illinois Accessibility Code, IAC. And then we'll make some reference to the 2010 ADA standards for accessible design.
Yeah, so it's important that the Americans with Disabilities Act is, as you all know, a civil rights legislation. The standards that Carla just talked about are where there's diagrams and specific language within the ADA that talks about buildings and facilities and access and gives dimensions and diagrams that need to be followed. So the Department of Justice comments that were made as part of the settlement come in reference to those standards.
And then very briefly, the scope of the settlement includes all of Champaign County-owned facilities. It also includes programs that are not housed in Champaign County-owned facilities, including Head Start, some of the polling places, and it also includes site access to any county-owned locations, such as parks or sidewalks, those types of items. Very briefly, not really included in the bulk of this presentation is the Champaign County programs that are in leased spaces, specifically the Head Start programs. We have been reviewing those and reporting on those to DOJ. They have facilities in Champaign, Urbana, Rantoul, and Savoy. The estimated cost to correct some of those access items is roughly $70,000. Now that cost, as well as the other costs you're going to see tonight, are estimated and rounded, just for general discussion. The little bit of background, the contract between DOJ and Champaign County was signed in July of just last year. The DOJ went through and identified access issues at the majority of your facilities and gave the county 3 deadlines. One was in October, one was in January, and one will be in March of 2018. Bailey Edward, like Robin said, has produced reports for the last 2 deadlines, the one in October of 2015 and the one just recently in July of 2016. January, sorry, July. I've been looking at too many sunny pictures this afternoon. As far as our approach, the Champaign County Facilities Department has really done a fabulous job correcting the issues to date for the 3-month and the 6-month reports. Everything that's identified really as the March 2018 reporting will need to be designed and bid as projects. They're just larger scale items that the county is not able to really do in-house. And we'll go over those in as much detail as you guys would like. Here's a sample report. This is what you guys have for Brookins in front of you. Again, we have this report for every one of your facilities. And just real quick, everything that's highlighted in green are items that have been corrected. There's a photo of the corrected access issue on the right-hand side and the date that it was completed. Any of the items that are not highlighted are part of this really 3rd deadline initiative that will need to be corrected in 2018. And then there are a couple of items you'll see in here as you flip through here that have been highlighted in yellow, not that one, that were they were identified as one of the previous deadlines. However, we have requested an extension from DOJ because it made more sense to incorporate those items into a larger project, either with the restrooms or with parking lot repaving, which couldn't occur over the winter time. So, and we had requested, on a side note, we had requested that DOJ respond either positively or negatively by yesterday, so we knew how to proceed, and we did not receive word either way. So we are proceeding as if the approval was given for the extensions.
And is everyone aware that the spreadsheet started off with the access issues that were identified by DOJ? And so then we've been using this spreadsheet as a way to document working with the county. So that's why there's various columns here as we were working through the various 2 deadlines. Oh, sorry. As we're working through the various deadlines that were required as part of the settlement. And we'll continue to use this spreadsheet and add to it so that when everything's complete, it'll be all complete with pictures and when identified when items are completed by.
Quick question, if I could. About halfway through, there's a line that has both the yellow highlight that you mentioned and then a red highlight on the cost. I assume that's to call out a special feature of the cost. It's a bathroom. Toilet isn't accessible at 2.26-2 or 2.62.2.
Yes, I had highlighted that in red because I had put a cost with that, primarily because we had requested an extension on that item. Not so much an extension, we had requested a variance. That's where it's in the women's locker room here in Pod 400, where the grab bar does not completely extend to 54 inches past the rear wall, it's 2.26.2 for those that are still looking for it.
The numbers are in the.
Yeah. So I had put a cost associated with, maybe furring out that wall, buying a new grab bar, and trying to extend that grab bar to the 54 inches that's required by ADA. But I highlighted it in red, hoping that we would receive a variance on that, where I could then take that back out of my cost estimate. Any other questions right now?
Well, I think if you were to look through all these reports, there's still some items like that on smaller items where we're still working, trying to come up with the resolution that makes the most sense for the county and the county's building users, and also meets the standards without, sometimes because of the geometry of the room or the way the building was originally constructed previous to these standards, it makes it very difficult to meet, everything. So that's why in some cases we're looking for variations.
So moving into some of the buildings that we have reviewed so far. Now again, the items that we're going to talk about or identify tonight are not all the items that were corrected for each one of the facilities, but they are the outstanding items that remain to be corrected. So at MetCAD right now, we're looking at modifying the ADA parking that is existing and creating a compliant route from that parking to the building. I believe right now the cross slope is at 3%, so we're going to have to take out a section of the paving and the parking and re-pour it, feather it back into the existing, or, there are some options. Maybe we can grind it down and make it work. But those are all things, it's a little further on in design. We're basically at, preliminary at this point. So we're identifying what needs to happen and putting a estimated and rounded cost to it. So right now we're thinking this work could be done for approximately $5,000. The nursing home has, the remaining item there is the ADA access from the employee parking to the employee entrance. It really has a high cross slope, and it is, you can see probably better on your handout, that where the employee parking is to the north, the path that you have to travel there is quite a distance, and so we're going to be taking all of that sidewalk out and reinstalling it to meet ADA cross slope requirements. So we have again an estimated cost of maybe $9,000 to take that out and re-pour that. Highway fleet maintenance has a little bit of work left to do in the shower, where we have to relocate some controls in the shower to comply with ADA and modify one of the restroom stalls, along with parking access at the visitor and the employee parking areas. And we've got a cost of $14,500 on that. Am I going too fast? No? Okay. The courthouse, it's a little bit larger scale. There is some ADA access issues in each one of the courtrooms. A little bit of work that has to be done in some of the restrooms. There's some cane detection that needs to occur at one of the, excuse me, at the electric water cooler there on the first floor. And the DOJ has requested that at least one of the holding cells on each one of the levels comply with ADA. There may be future discussions about the holding cells, but we went ahead and included a number for complying with that. Mainly because their request is they want ADA grab bars at the restrooms for at least one of those cells. And it really comes in conflict with the judicial system where you have something that people can, take their pants off and it's a suicide hazard, really. So we're going to request that we be allowed to provide temporary accommodations when it's needed, where those individuals can be observed and monitored, and then that equipment then can be removed from the holding cell when it is no longer needed. And so those variances are something we're going to plan on requesting through DOJ. The courtrooms, there's various items at the courtrooms. Some of the ramps are a little too narrow. If you've been in those areas, there's wood paneling on the walls. So we're going to have to adjust some of the walls, rebuild some of the ramps, and at that point, we're going to have to recarpet the courtroom. We have 9 courtrooms, 5 large ones, 4 small ones, and so we have plans right now to modify all of those courtrooms. And then one of the larger items is there's a theme here, the parking lot and the ADA parking and access to the building. The cross slope is too great for ADA compliance. So we're looking at having to likely remove a large portion of the parking lot and rebuild it to be ADA compliant, and then feather it back into, again, the existing parking areas. So we have a cost just on our parking at approximately $70,000, and modifications for the entire building at $233,600.
There's a possibility with the courtrooms that we could take a look at, and I know that Carla and Dana have talked about looking at the courtrooms and seeing if we can not have to do all of them. You could take the large courtrooms as a group, the small courtrooms as a group, and perhaps working with DOJ, come up with a percentage of those that would need to be compliant. However, if each one of those courtrooms within the small and the large have different programmatic elements to them that would mean you can't move the venue to another room, even that would be the same size, because then that's probably not going to be acceptable. So for now, to be conservative, we want to plan on all of them. Mm-hmm. So the original design drawings for the building, we believe,
they had indicated
that they were all going to be made accessible, but there were some shortcomings, obviously, that were found. So, and as Carla was mentioning, those are relatively expensive because it's all decorative wood paneling, all integrated within, so it becomes very expensive, even though our intent would be to remove it carefully and reuse it and as much as possible. But the costs add up.
Ilias, primarily, there's one restroom modification that still remains at Ilias. Primarily, it's providing an ADA compliant ramp between what has been identified as the ADA parking area and the main entrance of the building. Likely, this will be a large ramp there by the entry. That's what we're planning right now. However, after we look at it, there may be other ways that we can get into the building. And then we also need to, excuse me, we also need to add a wayfinding sign to clarify where the ADA entrances are there. Oops, I didn't review cost. So we have an estimated cost on that at $14,500. And then Brookins, primarily restroom renovations here. Whoops. And what did I do? Some large, some small. Some are, adjusting urinal locations, modifying hand dryers, specifically at Pod 100. Pod 200, really, we're going to have to provide a compliant sink, a hand dryer, and update our fixtures to be compliant and provide a compliant stall. Same thing with Pod 400 here. And then also included here is the modifications to parking lot A. The route from the ADA identified parking areas to the front of the building has cross slopes of almost 5%. So that, again, will require cutting sections out, rebuilding them to be compliant, and then feathering them back into the existing paving. And we
Carla?
have,
Can you explain the cross slope to me? I mean, is that where the ground is moved underneath, so the sidewalk is moved?
well, the cross slope really refers to the path of travel that you travel along in a wheelchair. So if you're in a wheelchair here, your cross slope is what is across your wheelchair, basically. And it's only allowed to be a 1/4 inch per foot. So, and that's, what is that? 2%. So at 5%, you're leaning pretty good in your wheelchair. Is that-
Yeah, the freeze thaw can certainly adjust the slope, the cross slope on your sidewalk. I've seen that happen quite a lot. If it's at 5%, that is probably more than just that has happened. A lot of these areas were built a lot of years ago, and there's been a lot of winters of that. But they may never have been at a 2% cross slope. They might have been close back then, and it's just been so many decades. Some of these routes have been there that who knows what has happened. Settlement could have happened if there's an adjacent utility trench. There can be a lot of things that cause sidewalks to move over time. So it's hard to say.
But there's no way.
They just get it. But there's no way to change the soil or anything underneath to change that cross slope without removing all the concrete?
Actually, there can be. If you have enough work that's similar, we've actually used a mud jacking technique on sidewalks fairly successfully in a handful of locations here in the last 4 or 5 years, some of them even in the campus area, so the U of I is on board with that as well. It's not cost effective if you just have a small area to ramp up that procedure, but if you have a lot of areas around, and it depends on how you would structure, what kind of packages you would put these in. But if you might be able to go from site to site, and with mud jacking, you might be able to, in fact, pump grout underneath the low area and raise it back up so it's at a proper cross slope. So not knowing yet how these might be packaged and whether that's a cost-effective technique to address what's happened, we've right now just assumed removal and replacement. But there might be some alternatives. If there's been a problem with a utility trench or something like that, that may have to be addressed at the same time in order to allow mud jacking to be effective. But that will come along later when we get down to actually the design phase to see what the real corrective measure could be. And we've tried to select what would be the higher cost. So if we can get another technique to use, it will lower the cost from what's shown.
Patsy?
So based on your description there, in theory, in 10 years, DOJ could come back in here and look at the facilities, and those sidewalks could have tilted. In other words, there's no guarantee because of all the underlying aspects which you just very clearly described to us. Is that accurate?
Yes, actually, that is accurate. The standards that actually, ADA standards, are actually construction standards. Okay, so when you build a sidewalk or build an access route to a proper cross slope, if over the period of time things adjust, then they certainly don't meet the construction standard, that design and construction standard. But it's a maintenance, it's an operation and maintenance kind of thing. So there's not a codified rule in what applies. It's more case-by-case basis. The person reviewing it, you know, I have seen many times that these design standards and construction standards are applied throughout. So you are exactly correct that things will move around over time, and that doesn't mean that you violated the ADA law exactly, but the shifting can occur, and someone can say, well, you have to correct that, though that's not part of the actual code in the legislation, but that's the interpretation that has been taken.
I believe we were finished with Brookins. And then juvenile detention. Now, juvenile detention is a bit unique. We have not had a deadline for any of the items at juvenile detention. So all of juvenile detention items are due in 2018. So they still include some of the items such as include mirrors, move signs that have been done at all of your other facilities, but have not been done here. So we're moving signs, adding mirrors, adjusting door closers, hardware locations, and then again, primarily modifying the section of ADA parking to provide the ADA compliant cross slopes and slopes for access to the building. So we have a cost here of $34,300. Okay, so very, very briefly, summary of where we have been. So our deadline dated October 20th, 2015, which was our 3-month reporting. Most all of those modifications, actually all of those modifications, were done by Champaign facilities staff. The approximate cost was $9,700, and they spent about 58 hours implementing those costs. Samples or examples of what those modifications were adjusting door closers or purchasing of new closers so that they could meet the required push pounds per, I guess, square inch, push-pull requirements for ADA. Installed adjustable keyboards for ADA access, adjusted grab bar locations at toilet stalls, installed mirrors, and included ADA parking signage. The January 20th, 2016 deadline that we just reported on, again, was done by Champaign facilities, excuse me, staff at an approximate cost of $6,100 and an approximate hour of 120 hours. Again, we were relocating signs, room signs to comply with height requirements. We provided cane detection in our circulation areas. We modified restroom stalls. We resealed and restriped some parking lots, and again installed ADA signage. One other thing, they modified all of the fire extinguisher cabinets here in Brookins, which was a tremendous savings to the county. They took all the old ones off and cut them down to 4 inches off of the wall and repainted them, put new hardware on them so they were compliant, and then reinstalled them in the same locations. So they've been rather crafty at those items. And then looking forward to March 2018, again, these modifications are going to be a little bit larger scale. Examples are, like you saw, modifying slopes and cross slopes to provide ADA compliant ramps from parking to the front door, restroom modifications, and modifications at the courthouse in the courtrooms. We've estimated the project costs. This includes construction, contingencies, fees, printing costs, the entire project, at $534,000 to $605,000. Now, this estimated cost does not include the sheriff's office, ADC, the Head Start facilities, or any of the polling places. The Head Start and polling places, again, were identified in the DOJ report, but are not county-owned facilities.
Yeah, so one of the reasons we're giving a range is for what we discussed before and what Chris was talking about in terms of how we package the projects and the different techniques that we can use. If we can identify an acceptable, technique that's going to achieve the result and achieve long-lasting results for less cost, that's what we're going to do. And there's also some items that are in discussions in terms of variations or interpretation as well with DOJ that we'll be looking at. But we wanted to come to you with what we felt was like a worst-case scenario, and we want to bring that number down. So that's kind of in general the approach that was taken.
Okay. And then kind of our plan of where we go from here. We recommend separating the remaining work into at least 2 groups of work. That way we don't have to spend all of our money this year or try and save it all and do all the projects next year. We don't have that huge hit in one fiscal year. So we're looking at designing for a package this spring and doing construction over the summer and having that complete this fall. And then again, likewise, next summer, having a package ready to bid out in early spring, and then have the construction over the summer and fall, and then being completed with all of our construction projects by fall of 2017. That way we have enough time to document it, write our reports, and be ready to submit our report in March of 2018 to DOJ. That kind of sums it up.
Okay, are there further comments?
I was just going to add, we didn't really spend much time talking about the polling places. We did go and survey 131 polling places. And for the most part, we identified deficiencies, but for the most part, there's going to be with a polling place, since it's a leased property and it's only periodically used whenever there's an election, there are different standards and measures that you can take that are temporary in order to meet the requirements, access requirements. So that's being looked at, and most of those are being looked at and talked with the landlords of those facilities, as opposed to the temporary ways to mitigate more permanent solutions. So that's kind of on a separate track, and those numbers aren't included here because the county doesn't own the buildings, and again, for the most part, there's going to be a temporary approach that would be acceptable to DOJ, but it doesn't incur permanent costs.
They've also been looking at new polling places for some of the worst offenders, or purchasing buzzers where people can identify they need assistance getting into the facility, and purchasing some temporary ramps, like you said, to assist that.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Yes, James, pardon me.
I recognize that certain buildings are excluded from this list because at the time we were not expecting to be in them for the long haul. I'm talking about the sheriff's office and the downtown jail more specifically. Can somebody go over what the timeline for that building looks like? Do we have to make a decision by a certain time and then we're under the same deadline, or when we make our decision, do we have a new discussion with the ADA? What's the story with what would happen with the sheriff's office, for example, if we decided before the 2018 deadline that we were going to keep using it for the long haul?
Could I ask Deb to answer that? We've talked about that, but I think maybe Deb could answer that very well.
When we talked with DOJ, we let them know that the sheriff's operations master plan was completed about the same time we were negotiating the terms for the settlement agreement. And basically, from our conversations with them, I think if 1 year from now, in the spring of 2017, there's not an indication that we will be proceeding with the elimination of the downtown facility, that we will then have to work with DOJ to work making that facility compliant. And it would probably also need to be done by March of 2018. That would also include the satellite jail. They were both excluded because the assumption was the downtown facility would be removed from the inventory, and with the remodel of the satellite, any ADA issues would be dealt with in that remodeling project. I think they're willing to work with us as long as they know we're proceeding with that, but if we don't know that we're proceeding with that by a year from now or a year from March, like March 2017, then I think we would need to revisit it with DOJ.
My understanding too, that we are in the process now of looking at those costs, and hopefully we'll have those available by the time of our study session later this month. So we'll have a better idea what the ADA cost to upgrade to ADA standard of those two jails and the sheriff's facility will be. Any other questions?
Oh, well, since I don't see any other questions, I just wanted to thank everybody, both staff and Deb and you all, for all of this work. I know we're not done, but you put us on a excellent course, and it's very much appreciated. And very much appreciated to Dana and his staff for all of the effort you've made in relationship to saving the county many shekels along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. You pretty much preempted my last comments, but I did want to mention that very much appreciated the work that Dana and his staff have done, and the work that Bailey Edwards have done, and Deb as well. So I'll just reiterate what you said and express my deep appreciation for what our staff has done. Any other questions while our presenters are here?
Thank you very much for your time.
That was the air conditioning.
Ah. The next item on our agenda will be a presentation and a discussion of the proposed capital asset projects for fiscal year 2016. And so when Dana is available, he's passing out the proposed schedule now. Would like for him to present that to us and open it up for discussion.
Thanks, Gary. The document I handed out is actually, we had assistance, obviously, with our facility condition assessment that was performed by Bailey Edwards, Henneman Engineering, Burns and Clancy. Excuse me. We were able to pull together this information and kind of create basically the top list of projects for this year. Yes, we have $532,000, and if you look at this list, it certainly exceeds that. We're going to take them in order. Number one is our highest priority, and that's for the coroner's office. Election storage, physical plant will benefit from it. But currently there is no backup power for the coroner's office. In performing his duties with autopsies, with the various storage entities that are there, we need to provide consistent power 24/7, irregardless what happens to Ameren, depending upon weather. We've got to be able to to provide energy and electricity for his operation, as well as election storage. Most of you remember Gordy's first election, power outage here at Brookins, also a power outage at Election Supply. No lights, can't get the garage doors open. You know, it was a mess. So that is our number one project. We've worked with GHR. They actually did a study a little over a year ago, specifically for the coroner's office. But as we began looking at it again, there's one main power panel in the building, really easy and not that much additional cost to cover the entire facility at $155,000. That includes design contingencies, bidding contingencies, construction contingencies, and fees. So that's absolutely everything. Yes, sir.
Dana, can you summarize what the losses and damage that has been done by power outages to the coroner over the last, say, 10 years? My point is, this is an operation that's been functioning there for decades. Why is it urgent number one now? Did we suffer a loss? Was there an issue that brought it to number one? I don't think it was on our list as number one for the future year last year. Just curious.
Well, we've looked at it a number of ways this year, and we think that is our number one issue. We had talked about it and done a study previously, but weren't ready to move it forward. In terms of answering your question, the coroner's office has not always been in that location.
I would just point out that only in the last couple of years has the coroner, he now has he does autopsies on site. And so he has the lab there, and if the power went out in the middle of an autopsy, that certainly would be an issue. He also has a 10-body freezer, which previously he didn't keep bodies. They were kept either at Carl or they were kept at local funeral homes. And I think that is one of the driving forces behind the need for this at this time.
So I guess I'm a little frustrated then that when we were asked to invest in those things, there wasn't a future capital requirement needed to support them, because I can remember the coroner coming and asking for those things, and I may not be saying it the way he said it. He said, I just need this to be able to do this. I just need to do this a little bit more to be able to do this. And the need of, I mean, what he really should have said is, I'm going to buy this, but you need to be planning for what it's going to mean in the next 3 or 4 years if I'm dependent on it and the power it runs on. So that's why I'm a little frustrated.
I don't know if I can add just a little bit to that, but my understanding is and help me, somebody help me with this, part of that new cooler was grant-driven, if not all. I think Carl provided some of the funding, and that basically serves as a overflow morgue, I think, for Carl, for sure. So I think that's part of why we were able to get the grant from Carl. I'm not sure, was it the full amount? Am I wrong here, Deb? Something, I'm just finding this in the back of my mind somewhere.
Carl did provide a grant to purchase a portion of the cooler. I believe we also paid for part of it. Mr. Quisenberry's point is also well taken. I never felt like we did a comprehensive analysis of adding a morgue to our coroner's office operation and the subsequent issues that arise out of that. And that's just something for the board to be aware of in the future. When you're looking at adding a function and it looks like we can do it for just this, we always felt there was probably more to it, and you're seeing the effects of that at this point.
Further questions or discussion on the issue? Mr. J.
Yeah, Gary, if I could just add and something to what Deb had just said. I think we got to remember that when the coroner moved in there, they didn't do any autopsies at all. and we had very limited space, 2 or 3, and I don't even think they were inside, coolers to put bodies in temporarily. I mean, and the coroner's job has evolved like all the rest of them have over time. I agree that there should have been some planning for this. I was kind of caught off guard too. Now all of a sudden we're a first-class morgue, and nothing wrong with that, but that don't come free, and we certainly have a right to know that ahead of time.
Yeah, and my understanding that was either going to save us money or make us a marketable commodity in the region, and so there should be more potentially money coming in from being able to provide that service that could help us with this kind of thing, and I would be okay with that.
Mr. Jay?
Well, if I could just add to that, I think that was a pie in the sky. I don't think there's money to be made in the morgue business, period, in all honesty.
Okay. At some point in time, we need to give Dana some direction. Do we want to leave this item as number 1 priority, or do we want to remove it from this list?
Can I ask a clarifying question? The amount of money that we have in the budget for these projects, is that also the money that we will be paying for the ADA projects out of, or do we have some additional money set aside for that?
You have a separate budget for ADA in the 2016 budget of $175,000. So you have $532,000 in capital facilities, and you have $175,000 in a separate ADA compliance budget that we established this year.
Okay, so my reading of the numbers earlier is that even in the most optimistic figure total that I saw, that means we're probably about $75,000 short of half of the total for this year, and we'll need that again next year, right? 534 roughly was the number. I think it was the lowest one. So we're going to have to borrow from this, from our total facilities budget to pay for to make up the difference of what we do in the first phase, unless we front loaded or end loaded, put more of them in the second phase.
Or add to the budget, which would be the other alternative.
What's the committee's pleasure on that one item? Do I have a motion to remove it?
Mr. Chair, I would like to hear about the other ones before I make that call.
Okay. So noted, and we'll proceed on. Go ahead, Dana, please.
Second item would be a replacement of the Pod 200 roof here at Brookins. It was put on in 1993. It's a black EPDM rubber roof with insulation. The insulation is, there's a lot of soft spots up there, so the insulation really needs to be replaced as well. This may, if DCEO has any funding, this may get us a few dollars back. We will certainly look into that as we do any project that is eligible. We can always apply before we do the project and find out if we're accepted. And you have until that end of that fiscal year to get it completed, or you just turn the money back. Anyway, we've had TSI Roofing come in. They cored the roof last week, took a look at it, and gave us their best estimate, which is certainly higher than we anticipated at $350,000. I would hope that writing up a good bid document and going out to bid, we could do much better than that. But we'll have to see. Third item here at Brookins again, we've got actually 2 boilers that are existing from the building when it was built. Some boilers can last 40 years. These certainly have, but it is time to replace these. The boiler in Pod 200 is the worst. You can actually see some rust, And you can, as you walk into the boiler room, you can definitely smell a little bit of not quite burnt gas. So we definitely have some sort of leakage out of the combustion chamber. We have pricing from GHR as a complete. It includes contingencies, fees, et cetera, for $140,000. Nowadays, you don't replace these large boilers with single entities. It'll be replaced with 3 Lochinvar smaller boilers put in place, housed in the same room. Fourth item is Pod 300. There's a boiler in the basement, a little bit more problematic. Cost a little bit more to take this one out, as well as to bring the new 3 in for a total cost of $160,000. Beyond that, we've got 2 parking lots that we've listed: Emergency Operations Center, filling cracks, resealing, striping. I don't know if you remember seeing the picture, but we've also have a little project that needs to be worked on with ADA that we can combine the change in the slope of the asphalt where ADA park out front of the building with this project, and hopefully split the ADA portion and get a better pricing for resealing and striping. The satellite jails drive and parking lot hasn't been resealed since it was built. It's in sad shape. It needs cracks to be filled. We've got some edges that are crumbling that need to be addressed, but in order to keep it in a functioning state for the next 6 to 8 years, we definitely need to reseal that as quickly as possible. Those are the 6 projects that we've identified. We have other ones, obviously, but our budget does not allow us to go beyond that, and will not allow us probably to hit all 6 of these, but we at least list them. The boilers certainly will be eligible for DCO money, again, if it's available, and if they're in business here in the state of Illinois. New boilers would certainly qualify for a pretty substantial grant. So any dollars that we can apply obviously go back towards the capital asset fund, and hopefully we can make this go a little bit further. So those are the 6 projects under the capital asset project. 2 others listed. They're both at the courthouse. We're having some issues, and this will be for the capital fund project at the courthouse. We're having issues with our communication, our building, automated building services system. It's Alpha Controls. The controls in the building are now 12 years old, and in our middle section, it's kind of divided into 3 large components. Our controllers are having trouble. They're basically a computer processor, and they're losing data and losing connectivity to us. So they need to be replaced. That's a $14,000 expense we have priced out with Alpha Controls. And then the second price that we're still discussing and working through some issues with Alpha on is a tritium controller. Does a couple of things. Again, it's communicating back from the mechanicals, and it creates basically an open network for us so that we can access from our PDAs, our smartphones, versus actually physically having to be in the courthouse and getting on the automated building system. Very helpful in communication if we can get that done, versus having to send somebody in the middle of the night to do something at the courthouse where they could be at home on their phone and look something up and make a change, and see if it's necessary to trudge into town from wherever they are and accrue time and dollars. So those are our projects for this fiscal year.
Rachel, did you have a question?
Yeah, the question on item 1. So I understand it will be nice to have a backup generator, but how frequently do we have power outages? How long are they, and how long is it before it's really a problem? I understand you need to refrigerate bodies, but I would assume that there'd be significant length of power outage before it's a problem? So do we know that?
For last year alone, we had at least 3 significant power outages here that affected the entire campus, including the nursing home. Most of our facilities have power generators to be able to continue their operation. Very few of our facilities don't. My guess is the reason that those buildings, these 3 didn't, is that county couldn't afford it at the time, and they built what they built to be able to move into, and their operations have changed. Certainly the coroner's office is added a lot more. He's added staff. I know that, you know, they go out on numerous calls per day. You know, in looking at it in my 2 years here, I think it's an issue. I think it's a significant issue for his operation. I think it's a significant issue for Gordy's operation, county clerk, in terms of election. Yes, it may only impact on one night, but he had a pretty significant power outage on an election night that was severe. Power outage that was had that we've experienced here in the last year, we had one that lasted about 4.5, 5 hours during the week. We had another one on a weekend that we were down all day. And then the other one was just probably an hour or two. We've been fortunate, Champaign, Urbana has been fortunate and not had the significant ice storms in the winter and spring of late, but I certainly remember my time here in Champaign where significant properties and businesses were out power for days, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disputing the importance. All I'm saying is we have a limited pot of money. 600,000 is probably not include, well, we know it's not probably. It doesn't include the DOJ settlement, so which one should we give up? The boilers? The DOJ? I mean, eventually we're going to have to give up something. And so, in your judgment, do you think this would be higher priority? If we put the DOJ settlement here, where would we rank that, do you think?
If we put the DOJ settlement.
Well, the
in.
ADA settlement we just heard about.
We are trying to maintain that separate
I know
from the
that, but-
532,000. So, okay, so if you had to come up with another 75,000 this year, because you have 175,000 budgeted, would you take it, I guess this is something for you all to think about, would you take it out of your 532,000 for capital projects? Or would you take it from the general corporate fund, because that's where we took the 175,000 from to create the ADA compliance budget this year?
Well, my concern is it's not really just 75,000, right? We have items that are not on the list.
For
the two
ADA?
Yeah.
No, I think for ADA, what do you mean items that aren't on the
Well, they
list?
said it doesn't include the polling places. It doesn't include several things, and even that is a low estimate. So, I mean, I'm not sure that the general corp has extra money in there to pull it from. I'm not suggesting it has to come from here, but I don't want to do the same thing we've done with the coroner's office. We say, okay, we just need to look at this, and I was like, oh, there's one more thing to look at. I want to look at the bigger picture now, and then say, oh yeah, I can afford all these, great. But if not, I want to set up priorities now and not do, oh, this is really, really, really important, so let's do that, and then we're stuck with something else we can't pay. That's all I'm trying to do. And I don't know that this is less important than the other one. I just want to look at the bigger picture, not repeat the mistake we just discussed we've made. That's all.
Yeah, I guess I have a question that may not have a good answer, but if this were a normal year, and we know it's not, what kind of, in the past, for replacing a boiler, I think we've gotten some assistance from the state on that kind of project. For a $140,000 project, what kind of assistance have we seen for replacing a boiler if this were a normal year and we could get our request in?
I can't answer that right now, James, because we haven't run the numbers or looked online, but we could certainly do that. here in
Has
the
it been
next
like a
couple of
third
weeks.
or a half or?
Well, I would guess it would be in the $20,000 or $30,000 category per.
So, I mean, potentially, if we got help on the second, third, and fourth projects, what does that look like? Does that create enough space for us to do the top four? Because really what I'm seeing, and I think Rachel may have been saying the same thing, of those top four, it feels like one of them has to go. And we know that we're burning fuel and risking a building failure with the boilers. And we know that the longer we leave a roof not taken care of, we're going to have more damage inside that we have to remediate. The risk to the coroner's operation is a perceived and maybe very real, 3 times a year kind of risk. But what loss have we suffered so far with that risk, and what is the potential loss that we would suffer with that risk compared to leaving one of the other top 3 off? The other 2 at the bottom are relatively minor in my viewpoint from a standpoint of in or out. They're not going to make or break the situation. Sure, I asked a question. It just feel I'd put that, I guess, to the committee. I mean, we can't do all 4 of those. Which one of those 4 is the most likely to cause, or which one can we leave off without incurring more expense over time than the others?
Well, I agree with James on this. Although I don't know how much room there is for some savings amongst the top 4, I think it'd probably be important that we try to prioritize them. And then if we can create the savings, whether it's rebates or some other type of savings, maybe we can get them all 4 in there. But if we can't, then one of them has to drop off, and that'll be the 4th one. I do have a question about number 1. Looking at emergency generators, this is a whole building. When anyone buys a generator, they look at the essential functions. The house looks at keeping the refrigerator running or the heater running in the winter, or the air conditioning in the summer. And you just don't power up parts of the house that aren't really needed. And this would be true in businesses as well. So why the whole building generator? And I realize you don't save a lot by putting something a little smaller in there, because there's still a cost of setting it all up. But why the whole?
The building itself is pretty minor in terms of its overall power. There's very little mechanicals. They're basically rooftop units on the ground outside of all 3 locations. That's a significant power. They've got computers, they've got other things in both the coroner's office, and significant power for computers, ballot counters, other things in the election storage area. In our shop, it's pretty minimal. It's a very small panel. It's just easier to put a larger unit in than it is a smaller one. The difference is pretty small, quite frankly.
It just seems to me that, if I turn around and say what's critical in those 3 functions, quickly identify the refrigeration units. And I can't think of anything else that we would die with or not have to have for 3 8 hours if the power were out that long, or even a day. I mean, I know it's inconvenient, but as long as at a minimum we kept the refrigeration units running, then, so I guess that's, to me, that would be the priority, but I don't know how much we save.
You would need to keep their HVAC system running within the coroner's office. Don't have one, a very small one in only a couple rooms in election storage, and the computer room, very small, in the facility shop. Wouldn't have to necessarily do the heaters, I guess, but you got to have the HVAC and the corner shop going if they're in the middle of an autopsy. You've got to have ventilation, you got to have lighting. Everything is recorded. So there's a little more to it than just that. But in terms of comparing it to a Brookins or a courthouse, you know, this generator is a heck of a lot smaller than those entities. You know, it would be a couple $100,000 for what courthouse has, what the satellite jail has, so.
Mr. Quisman?
So what is the size that's being considered with $155,000 generator? Ballpark.
150 kW.
Okay. So when we talk about this, we're talking about emergent need, right? And we're talking about supporting the clerk who has that emergent need at specific I mean, if it happens at the wrong time, it's a really bad thing. What would be the option for making the modifications to support a drive-up generator and having a contract for any significant outages to bring up a drive-up generator? The clerk could rent that for election day or the week around election day, and we wouldn't have to invest in the thing that we need 3 times a year potentially, and once every 4 years potentially.
For the election storage, we've done it in the past and it's been no cost because we use a emergency management generator. It's not hooked up to the building. The only thing we're doing is putting in little spider boxes with multiple outlets so they can hook up some of their computers to. It really doesn't do much. They have to use portable lighting then to light the facility if it goes out. To do what you're suggesting, you would need to put in, again, depending upon, I guess, what you want to prioritize, you would have to put in automatic transfer switches. Whatever generator that we're renting would have to be, carefully analyzed if it's from EMA to fit the needs for those transfer switches. Has to be cabled correctly. Is it possible? Sure it is. But that's also an expense. It's not inexpensive.
Couldn't that expense lead to the future purchase of a generator, a dedicated one? It's the same kind of transfer equipment that you're going to want to have if you go that route. So it might be a way to step into it without buying the whole thing this year.
We can certainly price that out and take a look at it if that's the direction you'd like to go.
I'm just trying to get a little bit of everything here, Dana.
I don't think it's possible with the list.
Now, enlighten me a little bit, Dana. We're working off of a list that the board created with the plan that was just generated, right? Regarding all facilities.
We're working off a list that was created with Bailey Edwards, Hanneman, and Burns Clancy through our facility condition assessment, and talking with them about, we've asked the question, what do you think our top priorities, our top needs are for our facilities? Obviously, our needs vastly outweigh our budget. And the majority of these items were on their list, as well as what we talked about internally within our own department.
And this is the list that's in front of us now, of $900,000 estimate in future repairs for 2016.
Correct.
Now, is there a contingency budget that we keep just in case there is some unexpected expenses or something down the line happens to cave in, break, fall, malfunction? Is there a budget that we have for a rainy day? if we do decide to spend all the $600,000,
My guess is, and I'll let the expert answer the question, but my guess is no, because if there was, a lot more things would have got done here with county facilities over the years, had there been.
and is it safe to say that we should spend all the money on these 3 or 4 projects and not have any on reserve before the year is, I mean, we're just beginning the year now, right? Before the year is out?
Well, we do have annual budgets for most of our facilities that are entitled repair and maintenance, so we can handle a number of issues that come up. If there is a significant item that comes up, whether it's at the middle of the year or the end of the year could be problematic. If it's in the middle of the year, you will probably start looking at reducing other repair and maintenance budgets to try and pull together. It just depends upon, I mean, you're throwing out a hypothetical here. It would depend upon the emergency, what it is, what the cost is, and we would attempt to deal with it within our budget.
So you're looking basically for some direction from the board regarding this prioritized list already, from the experts?
This is a prioritized list, and yes, we're looking for direction from you. If it's your decision to take off the generator, you take off the generator. We're looking at it, again, as I started off, and maybe didn't explain it well enough, but the priority would be doing the first project, getting the second project started, finding out what are true costs after it's bid out, which is when you find that out, and then seeing how far the remaining dollars will be able to go, and if you're able to secure any DCEO funds, you apply that into the pool and move forward.
Okay, I'd like to, if we can, start bringing this phase of our meeting this evening to some sort of a conclusion. I think what I'm hearing is we would like maybe to look at some alternatives, or one, and Dana has agreed to take a look at those costs and bring us back some numbers on that. When we started this discussion, this was what Dana thought that the priorities would be for the coming year, based upon the Bailey Edwards study. I think there's a difference here between maybe the operation of the coroner's office versus what Dana really feels like is needed. I think there's some good ideas that have come about with respect to this generator, and perhaps there are some ways we could stage the installation of a generator over there and still accomplish everything. So what I'm looking at, now the last 2 items that he mentioned at the courthouse, those are items that are funded. We have the money for that now. So I don't really think that's a big issue right now, and they're not that big big a dollar amount. What I would like to see us do at this point in time is ask Dana to bring us back some numbers the next meeting, and on the generator. And then also at this point in time, I'd like to have the committee direct him to proceed with the other items, 2, 3, and 4, and work through the money, and then he can get started on the roof bid documents fairly soon, which is probably pretty important to do, and allow him to get started, and we can make a decision what to do about the generator at the next meeting, if you'd like to do that. But at least let's give him the direction, if you don't mind, to get started and start putting together some cost of, and also maybe bid documents on item 2, and have him report back on items 3 and 4 once he gets some numbers in, more firm numbers on the bidding of the roof for pod number 2, pod number 200. Somebody want to make a motion? What we're doing now is giving him direction from the committee. This will not need to go to the full board, as I understand. The committee has the authority to within the budget, to allow Dana to proceed with the priority listing that he has. So if somebody would like to put a motion that I can even understand, and I'd appreciate it.
I move forward to use the prioritized list that Dana and Bailey Edwards has provided us tonight. Move forward until further estimates regarding the generator, because I believe that we could only do actually a couple of these, not three. Three will put us over budget, 650,000. If we decide to do 3 and 4 and 2. So my motion is to move forward with the recommendations provided by Dana and Bailey Edwards' study.
Now, but with some sort of a qualification on the needing additional cost to stage the installation of the generator, is that correct?
He's going to come back with some estimates regarding that. I understood.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. I think what I'm getting, and obviously vote on a second, but you would like me to take a look at the potential for staging a project for backup power with coroner's office, election storage, physical plant, putting in the switchgear, putting in the electric opportunities to bring in a temporary generator on a needed basis. And you're looking for those costs for the next meeting.
That's correct.
I thought we were also thinking about getting the estimate for the roof, because if the roof comes in 100,000 less, then we have that much more flexibility to deal with that. So, and we're gonna do it anyway, right? So there's no reason not to bid that thing out. So I thought, can we redo a cleaner motion maybe, so we know what we're talking about?
Okay. Deb, please step in here.
Well, just listening to your discussion, is there any reason that the committee wouldn't simply reprioritize this list and make number 1, number 5, or make number 1, number 4, move 2, 3, and 4 up on the list, so that Dana doesn't have to do a lot of extra work about a generator that ultimately you may be able to do? In the meantime, I think we do have a temporary measure, because we do have access to temporary generators through EMA that, Dana, am I wrong, would at least keep the cooler going in the event of a power outage that was significant?
With an investment in some electric work, yes.
Okay.
All right. Would it be appropriate to ask?
There was no second.
There was no second. So would it be appropriate to, let us entertain a motion to reprioritize this list as Deb suggested, and make the generator item number 4? Is that correct, 4? Yeah, and move the others up. So the roof at pod 200 would be item 1. The boiler at pod 2 is 2, the boiler at pod 3 is 3, and the generator is 4. Do we have a motion and a second?
I'll make that motion if you need someone other than the chair to do it.
Well, I think that'd be appropriate. All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion by,
Yeah, maybe I'd like a little amendment on that, so we give some direction to Dana, and that's with regard to item now, which is now item 5. Pardon? 4. Or 4, correct. I think it's inevitable, if our fear is that we're going to not have electricity to keep the refrigeration units going, that we ask Dana to move forward with getting those estimates, to just have the hookup capability, and I certainly would think that we should just go ahead and approve any cost, as long as it's reasonable, but we need to hear what that cost is in probably the next meeting, and then he can move forward with installation of that much, assuming it's not, $70,000. I know it's not, but I'm just saying.
I actually got I think I've got a motion to amend the first motion on the floor, but no second.
I'm not, watching Dana here, I'm not sure that that motion was necessary
That's kind of,
because I think Dana's going to try to see what he can do with that fourth one to get it in,
Sounds
despite
great.
what the
We all
first
know
three.
where we want to be.
Did everybody
Very good.
agree with that? And Dana, is that clear for you? Okay, great.
okay, let's vote on the first motion. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, thank you all. And I'm sure Dana will do a great job on the generator. Let's move on through this agenda. Does anybody need a break? We've been at this an hour and a half. If not, then let's proceed and ask Dana to make his facility director report.
This won't take that long. Yeah, well, yeah. No more questions. Just decent. A couple of updates, actually 3 updates. Update on our precast wall concrete panel project. We talked about it in December briefly. Just wanted to remind you that Satellite Jail, JDC are both 100% complete. Satellite Jail, not only did we do the precast panel joints, but we ground out the majority of the cracks and put in filler, and building's been totally painted. Looks good. It's holding water. It's keeping the water on the outside, which is a good thing. Same thing with JDC. We replaced the panel joints in that building that had gone bad. County Highway, we are basically done with the east side, the south side, and the west side. Have the north to go. So total project, we're about 90% done. We will come back and restart with Autobahn once the weather permits us. Once we get to that 45 kind of degree day pretty steadily. So probably sometime in April, we'll kick it off. They probably have about 2, maybe 3 weeks of work remaining. A reminder that total project was cost out at $261,179. That's broken up with Autobahn for about $231,000, and ERA's contract was for $28,600. To date, expense-wise, we've got about $17,000 remaining from Autobahn to bill us, so you can see the project is virtually complete, and about $1,300 from ERA to get to their not-to-exceed number. So we're virtually done, and anticipate, once they come back and get started, it'll be done very shortly. Any questions on wall panels? Next update, 2 updates actually are on the nursing home. During the month of December and January, we're busy with 2 projects. The first is a lint filtration project. On December 4th, GHR and the physical plant opened and recorded 3 bids that were submitted for the lint filtration. Reliable Heating and Plumbing was the low bidder at $149,490. Both GHR and the physical plant, we reviewed the bidder's documentation, had a meeting with them, and basically were able to determine that the Reliable's pricing was a good, viable, and on, I think it was December 17th, we held a meeting with Reliable, GHR, IGW, who's got a small component in the building regarding a new door and a wall, as well as Karen Nofke from the nursing home. One of the alternate items that each of the three bid on was to bid for off-hour pricing to try and speed up the project. In other words, narrow the duration of the project to less be a burden to the nursing home. We originally thought, when we put this project together, that the nursing home laundry would have to be shut down for a period of time, possibly a month. What our contractor was able to work out and have gone to great lengths, and they've actually been terrific, is that they, instead of taking down all 5 dryers, we'll take down 3 dryers. They'll put in the piping necessary, rework that piping. Nursing home will be able to utilize 2 dryers. They'll do split their shifts, so they'll be able to continue to have continuous laundry service for the facility. Not only is that in bedding and towels, but it's also personal laundry that they'll do for the residents at the nursing home. Once the 3 pipes are in and working and the lint filtration system's up and working, they'll take the other 2 out and we'll have 3 dryers to work with. That should only be about a 2-week period. The whole project should take basically a month. Substantial completion actually is scheduled for March 11th, with final completion for March 18th. Again, Reliable has been terrific and bent over backwards. We've elected not to take alternate 1, which was the additional overtime hours, because they were able to work out this for the nursing home, so it did not cost them additional dollars in outsourcing their laundry for the duration of the project. Any questions? Last one is on the fire damper project. On the 14th of December, the nursing home board gave us approval to move forward and bid the project. The bid was posted, advertised, beginning December 16th. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting on December 30th. Always a great time to have a meeting. We had 3 vendors appear: A&R Mechanical, Life Safety Services out of Kentucky, and then Reliable Plumbing and Heating from Champaign. Bids were opened up on January 8th. A&R Mechanical was the low bidder for $57,950. If you remember, this project is necessary because IDPH came in October, and one of their rules is that the fire dampers are inspected and tested once every 4 years. The nursing home had not done that, nor did they know, because they took over the maintenance where all of them were located. We also apparently didn't know where all of them were located. Hired GHR to come in and assist us in trying to find them. Ultimately getting A&R under contract in early January. They will start this project, actually the project started today, and will finish April 8th, be finalized April 8th. Nursing home has a report that is due to the IDPH on the 15th, showing that they've identified, and or repaired all of the fire dampers, and there are approximately 1,000 of them. We've met with the nursing home and A&R Mechanical, had a kickoff meeting last week to go over kind of the rules of operation. Every room, basically, every residence room has about 4 or 5 fire dampers, so we will be working around residents, trying to work with the nursing home. Actually, today and tomorrow, we're working in where there's no one located, just trying to get a gauge for how many dampers they can do in a day before they throw more workers at it. They'll probably have 3 or 4 people doing the inspections. So, but that's going well, and A&R has been terrific to work with, and the nursing home staff have been hugely cooperative in working with us and allowing us to get in and get into their facility, so. Questions on Dana's report?
All right, thank you, Dana, for the update. At this point, I'd like to move on to item 10, other business. Is there any other business that needs to come before us? Mr. Quisenberry.
I think we all need to remember that replacing the panels or repairing the panels at the satellite jail facility and this damper project that we're getting a report on, neither of those things were on the future plan for the years that we spent money on them in. So as much as we'd like to do all of the things on this list that we talked about tonight, we can't predict what might come up that will take priority.
I would like to mention from the chair that the beauty of the Bailey Edwards report is it's beginning to allow us to get at least a handle on some of this stuff, and perhaps we'll have a better way of predicting our costs going forward. Other business. Since no other business, I'd like to go on to the chair's report. And I would like to note that Mr. Hartke mentioned that he would not be here tonight, so I meant to mention that earlier. Future meeting is Tuesday, March the 1st, 6:30 p.m. And we're going to start our meeting with a tour of the Juvenile Detention Center at 5:15 p.m. prior to our March 1 meeting. So we'll meet at the JDC parking lot at 5:15 p.m. on March the 1st for a tour of the JDC, and then we'll come back to the to this building in this room to commence with our meeting at 6:30 p.m. on March the 1st. Request for adjournment.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.